Welcome to You and Your Democracy. It's a short take civics lesson as part of our program, Where Do We Go From Here? I'm Chuck Parkinson. Each episode, we will look at the head and heart of democracy. We will explore the values and the principles that have created our American exceptionalism and examine the structures and institutions that give us the guardrails of our democratic republic. To quote Benjamin Franklin when asked in 1787 after the Constitutional Convention, "Doctor, what have we got, a republic or monarchy?" To which Franklin responded with a rejoinder at once witty and ominous, "A republic if you can keep it." So now let's take a look at what is this great American experiment, and then ask, what do we need to do to keep it? In this episode, we will continue our conversation about the Preamble of the United States Constitution. I am pleased to welcome back Dorothy Rowdy Brewick, retired Rapid City Area School District Social Studies teacher. Thanks for joining us again today, Rowdy.
Oh, I'm just delighted to be back. This is fun.
You know, the Constitution has evolved since its adoption in 1790. Kind of the question we want to look at today, is the Preamble still viable and relevant today?
Yes, that is a good question. And of course, I think that is challenged and has been challenged continually down through the ages. But yes, it is, but not by accident, certainly. The founding fathers or the framers of the Constitution realized that what we needed was a government that was powerful enough to protect the rights of the people and also to defend the country. Those were the two key parts. But they were forming a more perfect union, so they had to establish justice. They had to provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare, ensure the domestic tranquility, and secure the blessings of liberty. All those things that are listed in the Preamble. And so, four things that they really spent a lot of time, I believe, when you read the Madison's notes and things, was that they wanted to make sure that this government would not allow a tyranny. They did not want the government to in any way revert to anything where there was single power. They also wanted to enable the governed, us, the citizens, the capability of also controlling ourselves. That we also had a responsibility in, and so this self-control was very, very important, and they promoted that. And then we wanted a populace that was wise enough and informed enough, and that evolved too through the years as far as selecting good representatives. They wanted to make sure that the voting public had either access to information about the issues and representatives running, or had access to someone who did. And of course, as we know, the Constitution through amendments changed. It used to be that state legislatures sent the senators to Washington, and now we send our own senators. And then I think the last one maybe is the most important one, that in a democracy, the majority rule, but it is very important that the majority rule with what they called an ear to the minority, so that all decisions were made not just for the majority, but for the common good of all. And so, yeah.
Excuse me, but hence the idea that how important compromise was in listening to each other to reach that compromised goal.
Yes. And also to know, yes, and to relationships and to know about. And so they really have wrote into the Constitution 4 ways that it meets those guidelines, and that it stays current, it stays appropriate. And so we call it a living document, and it is the oldest living document of its kind in the world, which is something that we need to be proud of, and we also need to protect. And so the amendment process. And so we have, depending upon who you talk to, amended the Constitution 27 times, 20 or 28 times. And of course, I'm referring to the Equal Rights Amendment. And so in Article 5, they showed that we could change the Constitution, and it's quite a process, and that's maybe a lesson for another day. But and so we have gone through that, and So we had 26 amendments, and the 26 was giving 18, 19, and 20-year-olds the right to vote. Well, then all of a sudden in the 1990s, we got a 27th Amendment, which has a very colorful history because it was one of the first 12 that became the Bill of Rights. One of those just sort of poof went out into the ethers or atmosphere, I guess, and it was brought back in the 1990s, and that's about congressional pay.
So that is interesting because that came from a student, as I understand it, at the University of Texas, who was researching and did a paper on it and then started to write to members of Congress about it.
Yep, that is exactly right. It was student-led. And anyway, and so this 200-year-old proposed amendment was ratified became a part of our Constitution in the 1990s. I don't remember, 1992 or whatever. So the Equal Rights Amendment was proposed in the early 1970s. It had a limit on it. The limit of time was extended. Anyway, it has been passed by 38 states, so it has been ratified. But because of complications and things that's happened in these years between, the archivist has refused to certify it. So the amendment process is not easy. And every day it challenges the interpretation of the Constitution. And we can go back to that too, but judicial review, and I think most everybody learned Marbury versus Madison, and but judicial review, the Supreme Court does can declare a law passed by Congress as unconstitutional. And there are, Roe versus Wade is a famous Supreme Court decision. Brown versus the Board of Education that ended segregation. That's another one that didn't say in the Constitution that they couldn't segregate, but this Supreme Court decision made that determination. And Citizens United now about campaign reform. It surfaces and then it goes away, and it surfaces and then it goes away. But the court can decide that a law passed by Congress is unconstitutional, and then it sort of becomes the law. And legislative flexibility, and that is I read somewhere that was broad ideas but few words, the laws passed by Congress. I don't know if they haven't read that like I did. Anyway, few words, broad ideas.
Yes, exactly.
Pages, stacked of laws. But Congress, there's the necessary and proper clause, there's the elastic clause. So Congress has right to pass laws. And like right now, if there was a mask mandate for people to wear masks, that could end up in the courts. And I think there are already some lawsuits going on. And then you look at how that something very similar has been decided in the 1902 or something, the smallpox epidemic. The court decided that the government could make a law. This was forcing people to get vaccinated for the good of public health, for the public health of everyone. So that will possibly be another way to change how the Constitution fits into our lives. And then the last one is customs and traditions. George Washington had 2 terms, so that became the custom. And it was the custom until Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who sort of ignored the custom and ran for his 3rd term and 4th term. So then we got the 25th Amendment. I think it's the 25th.
25th, yes.
Anyway, political parties. Political parties are not mentioned anywhere in the Constitution. But because we have political parties, our Congress right now is structured around Democrats and Republicans. Advisors to the president has become a cabinet. So there are a lot of customs and traditions that have become part of what we call the unwritten Constitution.
Right, but the bottom line comes back to the fact that we do have three branches of government with the responsibilities, but the ultimate lies with the Congress of the United States because they write the laws. And quite frankly, I think oftentimes it's forgotten that the president doesn't write the laws.
Write the laws, yeah.
President is given the authority to give executive orders. Last two presidents have used those a lot. It's not new to that, but Congress has the authorities to write the law, and the reason that is because the Congress is responsible to us, the people, which takes me to the underlying purpose that we always kind of draw to this: why my vote matters. And it does matter. If you win or lose, you are the voice that you referred to earlier in the beginning of the episode about the respect for the minority.
That's right. That ear to the minority. And so it is organic. Some people would say the Constitution is. It's this beautiful written down. Now, of course, the UK doesn't have a written constitution. So there, I used to tell the kids, if we were going to study the government in the United Kingdom, we'd need a room the size of a gymnasium if we wanted to look at all the laws and the statutes and all the decisions by the courts. And we have this one piece of paper, but how wise they were. And when we talk about who gets to participate in government, women got the right to vote, and then pretty soon they started participating. But the Iroquois Confederation had a tremendous setup as far as a democratic republic. That idea, it really was a confederation, but the idea of elected and making laws, and the women chose the chiefs.
Now that's a point that every time we run up to time on these things, but that's a conversation for another time, Rowdy, and I'd like to explore that a little bit, because I think people don't always realize the things that we have and where they came from, and the fact that the Iroquois nation, the Native Americans of this country, had a democracy prior to the time that we were here. But anyway, as time always runs out on us on these things, this is another thing we can address in a future program. And so that's our episode for now. I want to thank Rowdy Brewick for sharing her expertise and thoughts with us today. And as always, our executive producer, Suzanne Stratford, and the SDPB technical staff for their creativity and hard work on this program. Thank you also to the supporters of South Dakota Public Broadcasting who make this program possible. To view previous episodes in this series, go to sdpp.org/election. If you have comments or suggestions for future programs, send us a note at programming@sdpb.org. Until our next short take, I'm Chuck Barnes.